we need to again do due diligence into understanding when you're surrounded by a legal civil system of the Roman Empire. That's where it came from, and the Romans romance meant to fictionalize. It was stories that were not of truth. They mixed stories of love and war. Surprisingly, your given name, of course, would be from God. That is love. God is love. He's of truth and fact, not in fiction. And then the occupation of the world of men away from God, of course, leads into war, which leads into arms and leads into the world of legal weaponry, but it also leads into people acting upon that and actually doing things that are not of peace. So we can see that in the world we live in, and certainly we're not dealing with a world that's at peace right now. We're dealing with a world that will fake or fictionalize peace and eventually declare a false peace based on putting a piece of a legal person in your body as an abomination. But when we go to the Latin maxims, there's some interesting categories under the Latin maxims that deal with certain things, such as servants and slaves. Now, the world of legal has adopted more the world of servant, and that's why the King James Bible removed the actual proper translation for the word slave and compromised it with the word servant because it was unpalatable and it wouldn't have worked so well for the world that they were going to deceive people into in the Roman civil system. So when we're talking about the word slave, very interesting that a slave is not a person in legal. They have no legal rights and they basically could not be in the legal system. Christ purchased all mankind, righteous and unrighteous, and therefore they are all his property based on also their acceptance of receiving a pardon from the world of sin and what we would call legal, which is debt. But when you're operating in the legal, it's so much easier to deceive people and call them a servant. Now, when we look up things like idolater, which means hired servant wages, most people wouldn't realize that's the definition. Well, we're dealing with a hired servant, not a slave. And so they would be automatically in the Gentile world because the Gentiles were known as idolaters, those who worship false gods. So when we look up servant, an interesting, under the Latin maxims, there's a couple things we can look at here. A servant basically has certain context around it. So when we go to the word slave, it's got a context. So I'm just going to read down one at a time here. The first thing under servant and slaves, it says, whatever is acquired by the servant is acquired by the master. Now you'll notice that you will always have to have a licensed title when you are calling yourself Mr. or Mrs., because that's a master. But you are licensed to use that title. Therefore, you're not the master. You're a licensed impersonator of the master. And therefore, whatever you acquire for the master is the master's property. It's not yours as a servant. Clearly under Roman civil law condition. They're not hiding anything in what they're stating here. Then we go further. A slave is not a person, as we stated there. But what they're talking about in civil, we're talking about legal person. We're not talking about a spiritual entity. We're talking about something of someone who's impersonating in the legal with a legal mask. And that's how we generally use the word persona, someone who wears a mask, who's covering up who they really are. Then we have a slave, and everything a slave has belongs to his master. Well, that would make sense because everything that we've ever had coming from our Creator, we were his creation, so therefore we're his property. But it's much different in the legal world because most people that have operated in the legal world are going to be quite upset when they find out that their legal master, Satan, through his legal minions, are going to basically force them to give back what is not theirs because they've literally just impersonated the title. And therefore, they're expecting that the wealth they have belongs to them when in fact it belongs to the legal title master who controls it all. And that's why this is a very satanic system, and they're about to call in the chips on this. Now, when we're talking about spirituality, we know we are the property of God, so everything in the creation is truly his property, but he has given man dominion over lower creation and dominion over the earth. But that is mankind. That has nothing to do with humankind, nor the concept of the legal, artistic, deceptive word human, which are defined as those who are deniers of the divinity of God and his son Jesus Christ. So the world we're surrounded in has some interesting civil concepts going on, but people are not even reading the civil maxims. So it is a concern when people are talking in legal websites, but they're not speaking with accuracy and truth. So why most of the sovereignty free man on the land movement has made its failures is because it's trying to operate in the legal with the legal title that belongs to the legal master, and then telling the legal master they're not going to pay him tax. They're going to actually rebel against it, and he can just pull the power on everything in the artificial world that surrounds that. He controls the legal mammon, the legal banking, and everything else. So hopefully this video has helped and gives you some clarity on the subject matter. Maybe a good book to maybe take a little peer into is the book Slave. I'm not promoting the author, I'm just saying that there's a lot of good research in the book.